Hello, my darlings. So, this is our book that I'm going to share with you, and it's called Whale Magic. Now, this is a book that I absolutely loved when I was a child, and I still love it now. I think it's very, very magical and beautiful. So, settle down and listen to this wonderful story. It's by Judy Allen and Tudor Humphries. And on the back, on the blurb, it says, "One stormy moonlit night, as Anya and her parents are returning home from a nearby island, the boat radio brings news of a terrible oil slick. Soon afterwards, Anya sees something huge and dark in the water. It's a humpback whale and her calf. A calf is a baby whale. Both are in such distress that it seems as if only a miracle can save them. But that is when the whale magic begins." Okay, so I think we've talked briefly before about oil slicks, but I'm going to do a little video that's going to be down below that will demonstrate how an oil slick affects the ocean for you. Okay, so it'll be a little bit easier to understand after that. So if you want to pause the story at any point and go and watch the oil slick video, then that might help with your understanding. Right, this is a wonderful page which has got pictures of all sorts of whale types. I'm going to pop a picture of that up in the science learning. Okay, so we've got all sorts of different whales, and that is a picture of a person. So this is drawn to scale. So that means that's the size of an average person, okay, which is, larger than, taller than average, actually, quite a tall person, 6 foot, way taller than me, okay, because I'm like 5'3", so a lot taller than me. And these are the whales in comparison to the person, the diver. Okay, they call them a frogman, which is like sometimes what you call a diver. So the whales are so much bigger, and the biggest of all is the blue whale, which is the largest mammal. Okay, and that's important that we learn that because whales are mammals. Okay, they're not fish, they're not cold-blooded, they are warm-blooded, and they have to come up to the surface of the water to breathe. They can't just breathe underwater like fish can. They have to come up to the surface to breathe, and that's important for the story as well. Here we go. So, "I've never seen the moon so big or so brilliant," said Anya's mother as she kept the wheel of the little cabin cruiser steady. That's the boat. "It's a magic night now the storm is over." "Good magic or bad magic?" said Anya doubtfully. She thought the moon looked fine, but she wasn't so happy about the lightning, which was still chasing to and fro in the distance, just where the sky became the sea and the sea became the sky. Look at that beautiful picture. "It usually took 3 hours to cross the water between the island where Anya's grandmother had her house and the mainland where Anya and her parents lived. Always before they had travelled in daylight, but this time they had to wait for the sudden, fierce storm to move on its way, and they were late. The sea looked much deeper at night than it did in the daytime, and it also looked wider and stronger and stranger. It was not rough. There were no waves hitting against the bow of the boat, but there was something that Anya's father called a heavy swell. This meant that the sea made big, slow movements underneath the boat, as if it were breathing long, slow breaths, or as if something enormous were moving just below its surface. While Anya's mother steered the boat towards their home harbour, that's where boats come in, the harbour, and then they stay, whose lights looked as tiny and distant as stars, her father tried to make the radio work properly. The storm had left the air full of electricity, and the words were coming out of it mixed up with sparkling noises, as though 1,000 needles were being shaken in a glass box. That radio is not working properly. Anya thought she would rather listen to the clattering and the scratching of the needles than to what the radio was saying. It was talking on and on and on about an oil tanker which had run aground in the bad weather, and about rescue operations and a vast oil slick. So remember when we did that learning about the adventures of a plastic bottle, and we learned how people take oil from the ocean bed, so underneath the ocean bed, and they take it up and put it into a big boat, essentially, which is called an oil tanker, and then they take it away to turn it into things like plastic bottles. Well, the oil tankers, if they run aground, it means that they have they've gone up against the rocks or something, and then the oil spilled out of the boat. We did briefly mention that, and of course the oil is pollution for the ocean, because oil does not belong in the ocean like that. It belongs under the ocean, safely tucked away, not harming the ocean. It does not belong all over it. It's terrible for all the sea creatures and all the sea life and everything in it. And it spreads across the ocean and is very, very, very hard to clear up. So that's not good news at all. Now, this is quite an upsetting picture. We can see the oil spreading over everything and sadly killing some of the sea creatures. "Are people drowning?" said Anya, holding tightly to the edge of the boat and looking at the deep, dark water. "No," said her father. "Everyone's safe." "The people are safe," said her mother, "but just imagine what damage that oil slick will do." Anya knew what her mother meant. A flood of oil would come out of the side of the wrecked tanker and spread over the surface of the water. It would choke the fish to death. It would stick to the wings and beaks of the seabirds, so they couldn't fly or feed. It might even catch light and send flames running across the surface of the sea, threatening anything that was on it. "Are we near it?" she asked nervously. "No," said her mother. "It's a long way away." "Oil slicks travel," said her father gloomily. "Depending on the wind and the tides, it would come our way in a day or so." The moon and Anya stared at the swelling sea. "I know why people used to believe in sea monsters," said Anya. "It does look as though something huge is making the water bulge up and down, especially back there." "It's the current," said her father with his eyes on the radio. "It's the pull of the moon," said her mother with her eyes on the distant light of the harbour buoy. "It is a sea monster," said Anya, suddenly frightened, her eyes on something far behind, but not far enough behind. Something rose up just now and went down again, and it wasn't water. "Where?" said her father. "There," said Anya. "I can't see anything," said her father. Look, there's their little boat there. "It's not there now," said Anya in a small voice. "It may be coming closer, underneath." "Don't panic," said her mother. "What did it look like?" "Big and dark and wet," said Anya. "Like the sea?" said her father gently. "It wasn't the sea, it was different." Anya's mother slowed the boat and let it drift a little sideways so she could look behind them. "Oh, there," said Anya and her father together, as a dark mass rose up through the surface of the moonlit water for a second and then sank out of view. "Whale," whispered Anya's mother. "It's a whale, it really is." Wow, just imagine seeing a whale. Amazing. Anya's mother kept the engine turning gently so that the boat stayed more or less in one place, and they got out the binoculars and took it in turns to stare at the sight that the moon was lighting up for them. "It's a humpback whale," said Anya's father, "but it doesn't look right. It's floating and sinking. It's not swimming and diving." "I think it's in trouble," said Anya's mother when she had the binoculars. "I wonder if it's injured in some way." "There's something with it," said Anya when it was her turn. "There's something. It's hard to see. Oh, it's a small one. It's a very small one. It has a baby." Oh. "I know what's happened," said Anya's mother, sounding as if she wished she didn't. "The tanker broke up in the breeding grounds. That's where the mummies and the babies are. She's just had her calf and she's had to outswim the oil slick, so she had to swim far and fast to try and get away from the oil slick. She's exhausted." "But she will be all right," said Anya. No one answered her. "Will she be all right?" said Anya, wondering if she wanted to hear the answer. "I think she may not be," said her father quietly, as the shiny curve of the whale's back slid down under the water again. "The baby went down with her. She hasn't the strength to keep herself and her calf at the surface. Whales breathe air, Anya, like us. I think she may be drowning." He turned back to the radio. "But can't we do something?" said Anya, horrified. Her mother put her arms round her. "There's nothing we can do," she said, and her voice sounded as if she might cry. "She is very big and very heavy, and there is no way we could support her while she rests. I think we'd better go home." Very sad. "We can't leave her," said Anya, staring and staring at the place where the whale had disappeared. "We can't help her," said her mother, "and I don't want to watch her die." "I'm trying to get the Coast Guard on the radio," said her father, "just in case anyone else can do anything. but I can't get through." The whale's back appeared again, but she did not rise as far out of the water as she had before. She was gone again, almost at once. "She's not blowing," said Anya's mother sadly. "She's not breathing," because whales have a blowhole at the very top of them, okay, and that's where they release all the water. It blows out the top. "I can't bear it," said Anya, and her voice began to get louder. "Please help us. Someone must save her. Do something, please." The moon watched the dark, swelling water. Strange sounds began to fill the air, coming from everywhere and nowhere. Trumpeting sounds, almost like elephants, but not elephants, and then strong, steady chirping sounds, rather like birds, but not birds. "What's that?" said Anya's mother. The sounds grew stronger. They shivered through the sky as though the moonlight had a voice. They echoed deep under the water and made the boat shudder. "Look," said Anya. "Oh, look." Now, what do you think is there? What's going to happen next? Going to find out in part 2. So click on the next video to find out what happens in part 2.